Have you ever felt it? Not just a thought, but a current, a deep, almost pre-verbal tremor of a truth you instinctively learned to silence, to cloak, to carefully manage. That quiet, persistent whisper from the authentic core, often drowned out by the cacophony of expectation. The curated image you present to the world, an identity not so much discovered as painstakingly assembled, piece by meticulously chosen piece, over years, over decades. We are, all of us to some extent, architects of these intricate facades, these personas polished to an alluring, often deceptive sheen. We build them from the raw materials of our experiences, hoping they'll shield us from the harsh winds of judgment, earn us passage into the hallowed, yet often illusory, halls of acceptance, love, and worldly success. But what if the greatest, most enduring strength, the most profound and authentic liberation, lies not in the flawless, impenetrable construction of this mask, but in the raw, unwavering courage to witness its inherent cracks, to trace their origins, and eventually to allow, even invite, its gentle, necessary dissolution? This monumental construction, this second skin, often begins its subtle formation in the tender, formative years of childhood. It is less a conscious decision and more an adaptive, instinctual strategy born from a primal, non-negotiable need to belong, to feel safe, to be seen and cherished. A sensitive child, an open recording device to the emotional atmosphere of their environment, intuitively deciphers the unspoken codes. They learn with astonishing speed which facets of their burgeoning, multifaceted self elicit warmth, smiles, and connection, and which, conversely, invite a subtle chill, a frown, a tightening in the air, a painful withdrawal of affection, or even outright disapproval and shame. And so, the unconscious editing process commences, a silent internal negotiation. Pieces of the authentic self, vibrant expressions deemed inconvenient, overwhelming, or simply unacceptable by the primary environment, are quietly, protectively tucked away, relegated to the burgeoning, shadowy landscapes of the unconscious. The persona, the as-if self, the carefully calibrated presentation self, begins its ascent, its often lifelong reign. It serves as a necessary shield, perhaps in those early days, a brilliant adaptation. But if this construction is never re-examined, never lovingly deconstructed and reintegrated, it can morph into a gilded cage, a self-imposed prison, limiting the full expression of our being, no matter how outwardly successful or composed we may appear. We unknowingly trade the wild, unpredictable terrain of unfiltered being for the seemingly safer manicured gardens of conditional acceptance, a profound transaction whose full, often staggering cost is frequently only realized in the quiet, reflective moments of midlife or during times of crisis, when the old structures begin to tremble. These early blueprints, often absorbed from familial patterns, generational silences, and the pervasive cultural narratives around us, become the unseen architects of our choices, our relationships, and our sense of self, long after their original utility has expired. The echoes of these early adaptations resonate through the chambers of our adult lives, often dictating our responses before we are even consciously aware of them. Imagine, just for a moment, not for public display, but for the sacred intimacy of your own awareness, that you ceased all curation. If you truly allowed the messy, gloriously contradictory, sometimes deeply shadowed and uncomfortable parts of yourself to simply be, to surface into your conscious field without the immediate, almost reflexive internal correction, the wave of self-judgment, or the hurried outward apology. What if you admitted, not with shame, but with a courageous curiosity, even just to the silent, compassionate witness within, the sharp, undeniable pang of envy that can coexist, paradoxically, with your genuine joy and heartfelt celebration for a friend's triumph? The deep, cold current of existential fear that runs silently, persistently, beneath even your most ambitious, outwardly confident undertakings? The unsettling, disorienting moments of profound doubt, of feeling utterly lost, that punctuate your carefully constructed displays of unshakable confidence and clear direction? What if the part of you that strives for sainthood could sit down for tea with the part that recognizes its capacity for sin? What if the hero within acknowledged its symbiotic relationship with the trembling coward, the sage embraced its inner fool, and the healer confessed its own deep wounds? This is not an exercise in morbidity. It is the courageous entry point into the authentic journey of self-reclamation. When you begin to consciously cease the exhausting moment-to-moment performance of absolute coherence, of idealized virtue, of unwavering positivity, a performance that was never truly sustainable, the world, contrary to your deepest, most ingrained fears, does not collapse. Your carefully constructed reality does not shatter into a million irreparable pieces. Instead, something far more remarkable, far more potent, far more aligned with the fundamental nature of life itself, begins its subtle, yet powerful, unfolding. You begin the sacred process of integration. The immense reservoir of psychic energy once poured into maintaining the illusion, into the constant vigilance of policing your own thoughts, feelings, and expressions, into the exhausting game of managing the perceptions of others, starts to flow back inwards, becoming available for its intended purposes: healing, growth, authentic expression, and genuine connection. This is not merely a mental or emotional shift. It is often experienced as a profound physiological recalibration. The chronic, unexplained tension in your shoulders, neck, or jaw might begin to ease. The pervasive low-grade anxiety that hummed beneath the surface of your gaze might lessen its insidious grip. The gnawing, isolating sense of being an imposter, of being perpetually on the verge of being found out, might begin to recede, replaced by a nascent sense of inner congruence, of simply being. Because the profound truth is, authenticity is our natural default state. It is the energetic signature of our soul. Living out of alignment with this core truth is a fundamental, deeply taxing stressor on the entire human system, mind, body, and spirit. The unlived life, the suppressed self, casts a long, heavy shadow, creating a subtle but pervasive sense of inner homelessness, a feeling that no matter how much you achieve or acquire externally, something vital is missing. This internal dissonance often manifests as a vague restlessness, a difficulty in experiencing genuine joy or peace, or a pattern of seeking external validation that never truly satisfies the deeper longing for self-acceptance. Carl Jung, that intrepid cartographer of the vast, uncharted territories of the inner world, provided us with an indispensable map when he taught that the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. He wasn't merely offering a poetic metaphor, but a fundamental psychological principle. The more intensely we strive for a one-sided ideal of perfection, the more we consciously identify only with our perceived virtues, our kindness, our strength, our intelligence, our rationality. The larger, denser, and more potent the corresponding shadow becomes in the unconscious. We are, in many Western cultures particularly, relentlessly conditioned to chase the light, to embody only positive qualities, to present an unbroken, unflappable, and often emotionally sanitized front. But in this fervent, often phobic, pursuit of a singular idealized light, we deny, and therefore inadvertently give immense unconscious power to at least half of our own rich, complex, and multifaceted existence. We become psychically brittle, easily thrown off balance, because any challenge to our carefully curated and limited self-image, any unexpected glimpse of the disowned shadow from within, or reflected back at us from the world, can feel like an existential attack, a threat to our very being. The parts of ourselves we suppress, deem unacceptable, or simply fail to acknowledge, don't magically vanish. They gain a kind of gravitational density in the darkness of the unconscious, often operating with a surprising autonomy, influencing our choices, perceptions, and behaviors in ways we fail to recognize. Think about it with unflinching honesty. When you consistently deny, disown, and project your own complexities, who are you truly deceiving in the long run? Those who are genuinely perceptive, those whose connection you might authentically value, often sense the incongruence. Anyway, they pick up on the subtle tells, the energetic leaks, the involuntary moments, when the carefully constructed mask slips, revealing a flash of something unexpected, something more real, perhaps something a little dangerous. Those who aren't particularly perceptive, or who perhaps unconsciously prefer the comfort of the illusion, are, in essence, interacting with a meticulously crafted avatar, a curated representation, not the vital, dynamic, sometimes unpredictable essence of who you are. And you, the performer-in-chief, the tireless stage manager of your own presentation, you often live in a state of constant, low-grade vigilance, a subtle but pervasive tension, terrified of being truly found out, of your meticulously balanced narrative toppling under the weight of an unexpected emotion, an unvetted thought, or a spontaneous, unfiltered response. This internal division, this quiet, ongoing civil war between the accepted persona and the exiled shadow, consumes an almost unimaginable quantum of psychic energy, precious life force that is desperately needed for genuine growth, for fearless, authentic creation, for the forging of deep, resilient, and truly intimate connections, and for the simple yet profound experience of inner peace. Furthermore, it is crucial to understand that the shadow is not merely a dusty, forgotten attic filled with our negative or socially undesirable traits, our rage, our envy, our greed, our pettiness, our vulnerabilities. It also holds what the insightful Jungian analyst Robert A. Johnson so brilliantly termed the golden shadow, our disowned, often undeveloped, positive qualities, our buried treasure. Perhaps your innate brilliance, your sharp intellect, was once met with envy or ridicule in your family or peer group, so you learned, as a survival strategy, to dim your light, to play smaller than you are. Perhaps your natural assertiveness, your capacity for clear boundaries and direct communication, was labeled as bossy, aggressive, or unfeminine, unmasculine. So you cultivated a veneer of passivity or people-pleasing that chafes against your true nature. Perhaps your profound sensitivity, your deep empathy and intuitive wisdom, was dismissed as oversensitive or too emotional, leading you to build formidable walls of stoicism or intellectual detachment that cut you off from your deepest gifts. These unclaimed strengths, these sleeping potentials, these vital aspects of your authentic power and unique genius lie dormant, often projected onto others whom we admire or envy, waiting for the courage of your compassionate acknowledgement to awaken them, to reclaim them, and to integrate their power into your conscious life. The shadow, then, is also the repository of unlived life, of paths not taken, of songs unsung, and its integration is not just about confronting our demons, but also about embracing our latent angels. You give and have given so much of yourself, so much of your precious finite life force to the relentless, often unconscious maintenance of an image of who you think you should be based on outdated childhood, programming absorbed societal expectations, or the perceived desires of others. In this exhaustive effort, there is often precious little energy left for the cultivation and expression of who you actually are, in your evolving, multifaceted, present-moment truth. Every suppressed doubt that, unexamined, morphs into a hardened cynicism. Every unacknowledged fear that subtly, yet effectively, paralyzes your greatest potential. Every negative or uncomfortable emotion, pushed down into the metaphorical basement of your psyche, doesn't simply or conveniently disappear. It festers. It gathers energy. It projects itself outward onto the world, coloring your perceptions of others, fueling misunderstandings, and creating self-fulfilling prophecies. It seeks an outlet, a voice, often in highly distorted and destructive ways. Through self-sabotaging behaviors that derail your best intentions, through unexplained and persistent somatic symptoms that speak the language the conscious mind refuses to hear, or through sudden, intense emotional outbursts that seem wildly disproportionate to the immediate trigger, because they carry the accumulated, explosive charge of all that has been chronically unexpressed and unacknowledged. This profound exploration, this heartfelt invitation into the often daunting, yet ultimately liberating, labyrinth of your inner world, is emphatically not an invitation to indulge in unchecked negativity, to wallow in victimhood, or to abdicate personal responsibility for your actions and their impact on others. Far from it. It is, rather, an invitation to a practice of radical, courageous, and deeply compassionate self-honesty. It is a call to engage in what Carl Jung identified as the essential, lifelong process of the integration of the shadow. This is the deeply human, often challenging, sometimes terrifying, yet immensely rewarding endeavor of acknowledging, without immediate judgment or condemnation, that you are a vast, intricate, and often paradoxical universe of experiences and potentials. You are capable, as is every human being, of immense selfless generosity and moments of startling narrow selfishness, of profound insightful wisdom and instances of baffling stubborn ignorance, of breathtaking world-changing courage and episodes of trembling immobilizing cowardice, sometimes confoundingly all within the span of a single complex day, or even a single hour. The human heart, as Dostoevsky and others have so keenly observed, is not a tidy, well-organized room. It is a sprawling, often chaotic, battlefield where profound and opposing forces contend. To deny this inherent complexity is to deny our fundamental humanity. So I ask you again, and I invite you to let this question bypass the defenses of your intellect and land directly in the core of your being, the part of you that yearns for something more authentic, more real, more whole. How long will you continue to wage this exhausting, unwinnable war against your own internal landscape? A landscape that is, in essence, simply seeking to be known, understood, and integrated? How long will you dedicate the precious currency of your life force to the endless polishing of a static, lifeless statue, while the vibrant, breathing, multifaceted being within you remains undernourished, unseen, and unheard? How long will you exhaust your spirit trying to be a single flawless, predictable, and ultimately monotonous note when you are by your very nature designed and destined to be an entire, magnificent symphony with all its soaring, majestic crescendos, its heart-achingly poignant adagios, its playful, exuberant scherzos, and its occasionally jarring yet utterly necessary and ultimately resolving discordant harmonies? The beauty of the symphony lies precisely in its dynamic range, its capacity to hold and express the full spectrum of human experience. The journey of unmasking, of turning to meet the shadow, is rarely a comfortable one, especially in its initial stages. The inner critic, that internalized voice of judgment, often composed of the critical voices of our past, tends to become particularly loud and virulent when we begin to question the status quo of our persona. It will warn of dire consequences, of rejection, of failure, of shame, should we dare to step outside the familiar, albeit constricting, boundaries. To proceed requires not just courage, but an immense, unwavering commitment to self-compassion. This is not coddling. It is the essential balm that allows us to stay present with the discomfort, to soothe the fear that arises when old defenses begin to crumble, and to forgive ourselves for the times we inevitably falter or retreat. Navigating the reactions of others can also be challenging. Those who we're comfortable with, or perhaps even unconsciously benefited from. Our old mask may resist our changes, expressing confusion, disapproval, or even anger. They may accuse us of not being ourselves anymore, when, in truth, we are perhaps becoming ourselves for the very first time. This path is not linear. There will be moments of profound insight and liberation, interspersed with periods of doubt, fear, and the temptation to retreat to the familiar discomfort of the old persona. It is a spiral dance, ever deepening, ever revealing. Perhaps it is truly time. Time to lay down your well-worn arms, not in an act of defeat or resignation to a lesser self, but in an act of profound wisdom, of surrender to a larger, more encompassing truth about who you are. Time to turn your gaze inwards, not with the harsh, unforgiving glare of relentless self-criticism that so often accompanies our attempts at self-examination, but with the gentle, steady, unwavering light of compassionate curiosity and profound, unconditional self-acceptance. Time to consciously, courageously, and tenderly meet those disowned, fragmented, often wounded parts of yourself, the inner child still smarting from old hurts and misunderstandings, carrying burdens it was never meant to bear. The ambitious, creative self shamed into hiding its light for fear of outshining others or failing spectacularly. The angry, rageful self told its fire was bad or destructive, never taught how to channel its potent energy constructively. The vulnerable, needy self taught that dependence was weakness. To meet these exiled aspects not as enemies to be vanquished, flaws to be surgically eradicated, or shamans to be perpetually concealed, but as lost children, vital messengers carrying crucial information, exiled royalty holding keys to forgotten kingdoms within, all seeking, in their own distorted ways, a way back home to the wholeness, the acceptance, the belonging of your integrated being. This courageous, compassionate homecoming is the very essence of profound psychological and spiritual healing. You have been taught, by 1,000 subtle and overt messages from family, culture, and society, that vulnerability is a dangerous weakness, a liability to be minimized or concealed at all costs. That contradiction is a sign of a flawed character, an unstable mind, or a lack of integrity. But what if this deeply ingrained programming is fundamentally flawed? What if vulnerability, the willingness to be seen in our authentic, imperfect truth, is, in fact, the birthplace of true, unshakable strength, the conduit for genuine human connection, the fertile ground from which courage and resilience blossom? What if courageously embracing, even celebrating your inherent contradictions, the capacity to be both strong and tender, assertive and receptive, rational and intuitive, flawed and magnificent, is the only authentic path to a resilient, dynamic, and truly integrated wholeness? This relentless, exhausting performance, this deeply internalized need to be consistently good or strong or wise or positive or in control, is a meticulously constructed, often invisible cage of your own making. It is a cage whose bars are forged from fear and shame, yet subtly reinforced by a society that, for its own comfort, ease of categorization, and maintenance of existing power structures, frequently prefers predictable, palatable illusions to the inconvenient, often challenging, untamable truths of authentic human complexity. To step out of this cage is an act of profound rebellion and self-love. The alchemy of self-acceptance lies in this very paradox. It is often only when we can fully accept what is, including our deepest flaws and most challenging contradictions, without demanding they immediately change, that genuine, sustainable transformation becomes possible. This is not resignation or apathy. It is the courageous willingness to be with reality as it presents itself, both internally and externally. This capacity to hold the tension of opposites, to be, for example, both deeply sad about a loss and profoundly grateful for what remains, to acknowledge both our fear and our courage simultaneously, builds immense psychological muscle, a flexibility of mind and spirit that allows us to navigate the complexities of life with greater wisdom and grace. It moves us beyond the simplistic, polarized, black and white thinking that characterizes so much human suffering, into a richer, more nuanced, both an appreciation of ourselves and the world. This is the deeper meaning behind Jung's challenging assertion, "I would rather be whole than good." It speaks to an integrity that arises from internal congruence, from an honest embrace of all that we are. rather than a rigid adherence to an externally imposed or ego-driven morality that often requires the suppression and denial of vast parts of the self. True ethics, sustainable compassion, and wise action are born from this integrated wholeness. The profound irony, and indeed the miracle, is that the people who truly matter, the connections that genuinely nourish your soul and support your deepest becoming, are not and can never be built upon a fragile foundation of pretense or performance. They are forged, instead, in the shared sacred fires of authentic human experience, in the messy, beautiful, mutual acceptance of glorious, undeniable imperfection. When you begin to allow yourself to be seen, truly seen, not just your curated highlights, but your struggles, your vulnerabilities, your quirky eccentricities, your magnificent, terrifying, and sometimes utterly bewildering contradictions, you unconsciously, yet powerfully grant others the precious permission to do the same. You create, by your own embodied example, a sacred, resonant space where authenticity can breathe, where masks can be gently set aside without fear of judgment or rejection, and where real, profound intimacy, based on truth, vulnerability, and mutual respect rather than on illusion, expectation, and performance, can finally take root, blossom, and endure. The most draining, dissatisfying, and ultimately unsustainable relationships, the ones that leave you feeling depleted, unseen, misunderstood, and chronically on edge, are almost invariably those where you are perpetually, anxiously, and often unconsciously striving to live up to an unstated, often imagined expectation. You are trying to be the person you think the other wants or needs you to be, contorting your authentic self to fit a preconceived mold. But when you begin the courageous journey of owning and integrating your full authentic spectrum, you naturally, organically start to attract, cultivate, and retain those individuals who are not afraid of depth, who are not seeking a polished, static, predictable reflection of their own needs, but a genuine, evolving, resonant soul. Conversely, and this is a crucial and sometimes painful part of the process, those individuals or groups who are unknowingly in a relationship primarily with your mask, those who are threatened, discomforted, or perhaps even unconsciously dependent upon your old limited patterns, may begin to fall away. This can be experienced as a significant loss, a source of grief, even a crisis of belonging. Yet, it is often a necessary, albeit painful, pruning, essential for the health and vitality of your soul's garden. Their departure, however difficult, creates fertile space for connections that resonate deeply with your authentic, evolving frequency, relationships that can truly see, support, and celebrate the fullness of who you are becoming. Jung spoke compellingly of the self as the archetype of wholeness, the intrinsic, regulating center of the psyche, the inner compass that continually orients us towards our fullest potential. The journey of shadow integration, of unmasking and embracing our contradictions, is a core aspect of what he termed individuation, the lifelong process of becoming a unique, indivisible, and whole individual, distinct from the collective and yet deeply connected to it. As we shed the layers of the false self and integrate the disowned aspects, we come into closer alignment with this inner self. Life begins to feel less like a struggle against ourselves and more like a co-creation with a deeper intelligence. A profound shift occurs from seeking external validation and approval to cultivating internal congruence and self-sovereignty. The immense psychic energy previously consumed by suppression and performance is liberated, becoming available for creative expression, for deep presence in our lives, for pursuing our true passions, and for contributing our unique gifts to the world. We develop a robust inner authority, becoming less swayed by the fluctuating opinions of others, more anchored in our own intrinsic truth and values. This is not arrogance, but a quiet, unshakable confidence born from profound self-knowledge and self-acceptance. The integrated individual possesses a quiet power, a grounded presence that influences their environment not through force, but through authenticity and coherence. This, then, is not about arriving at some final, static, neatly packaged destination called wholeness or enlightenment, where all conflicts are resolved and all shadows are permanently banished into some inaccessible netherworld. Such a state is an illusion, a spiritual bypass that avoids the richness and complexity of embodied human experience. It is, rather, about courageously, wholeheartedly, and continuously embracing the dynamic, ongoing, lifelong process of becoming. It's about having the unwavering courage and the deep self-compassion to be a perpetual work in progress, a divine masterpiece, and a glorious human mess simultaneously, without apology, without shame. The path to true, enduring peace, to a resilient and adaptable joy, isn't found in the futile attempt to erase your shadows, nor in the equally problematic attempt to permanently reside in an idealized, disembodied light. It is found, again and again, in the sacred, ongoing dance of learning to engage with them both, to integrate their often conflicting wisdom, to honor and celebrate the full, breathtaking, sometimes terrifying, yet ultimately magnificent spectrum of your unique and precious humanity. The world, in its current state of flux, fragmentation, and often profound inauthenticity, does not need another flawless, predictable, carefully sanitized mask. It aches, it yearns, it desperately needs your authentic, whole, and beautifully contradictory self, your passion, your vulnerability, your unique perspective, your hard-won wisdom, your integrated power. And perhaps even more profoundly, more urgently, you ache for it. You yearn for the deep relief, the profound liberation, the quiet joy of simply, authentically, and unapologetically being yourself. The journey home to yourself, in all your multifaceted glory, is the only journey that truly, deeply matters. It is the hero's journey, the heroine's journey of our time. Embrace the full, resonant, ever-evolving symphony of your being. Dare to listen to its subtle melodies, to honor its silences, to move with its complex rhythms, and to let its unique music play out fully and fearlessly in the world. For in doing so, you not only liberate yourself, but you also contribute to the healing and evolution of the collective song.